Hi guys, welcome to the latest podcast of YarninBlak. Today I've got a really great friend popping in to visit us, Toni Janke, who I'll introduce to you very shortly. But first I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land that I'm currently calling in from. I'm here in Brisbane QLD on the land of the Wurundjeri people in Naarm, and I want to pay respect to elders past, present and emerging. But also I'd like to acknowledge all the lands where you might be all coming in from and pay respect to elders past and present. And I also want to acknowledge any other Aboriginal people that are here today. So today's friend of mine who's popping in to see us is Toni. So Toni, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you for having me. It's wonderful to be here. I'm also here, but I'm in Meanjin, which is Brisbane, for those who don't know, in Queensland, Australia. And I acknowledge the Yagara and Turrbal peoples on whose lands that I live and work.
Cool, beautiful. Thank you. So Toni, tell us a little bit who you are and a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. So I'm First Nations woman, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander woman. My heritage is, my family is connected to the Wuthathi, Meriam and Yadighana people from Cape York and the Torres Strait. And as I said, I grew up in North Queensland, but I live in Meanjin in Brisbane, and have lived here for a while. But yeah, I very proudly identify as having both connections to both peoples.
Yep. So have you always lived in Brisbane?
No, I lived here for a while, but I've on and off, and then came back again. But I've lived. I grew up in Cairns as a child, and then my mother still lives up there. I'm going up there next month actually, and then my family moved when I was about 10 years old to Canberra.
Oh wow!
Yeah, to Ngunnawal, Ngambri country down there in their nation's capital, the ACT, and finished my schooling there, and then went to university in Sydney.
Oh yeah.
So I worked in Sydney for a while.
So what did you study?
I studied law.
Oh.
So yeah, arts law, and then when I graduated, I went back up to Cairns, and worked up there. We were doing some work with a firm that had a retainer, and we travelled up to the Cape as well during that time. And then from then on, I've spent most of my life between Cairns and Canberra, up and down the south coast, the east coast, living and doing different jobs. Mainly lived on the Gold Coast for 20 years, which is where I had my kids, and it was a really beautiful place to bring up the family. Still is a bit crowded, but still a really pretty place.
I actually grew up in Tweed Heads.
Oh, did you? Yeah, okay, yeah, Tweed. Well, we've got family friends in Tweed. Love it around there, down Fingal and Kingscliff, yep. And such a beautiful place. Yeah, yep. Beautiful Bundjalung country. Yeah,
I actually went to school at Kingscliff and more.
Oh wow, there you go.
That's where I went to school.
That's just a beautiful part of the world. We're looking to move to around near, at the moment, to around near Mullumbimby.
Oh yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, which is just really pretty. A lot of musos down there, but maybe in the next couple of years.
Yeah.
Sooner if I can.
Yeah, and all I know is about all the house prices have gone up.
Oh well, it's all the Melbourne mob. All the southern mob moving up, after COVID. But yeah, the property's really gone off. It's, the prices have just gone off through the roof. Yeah. So, but yeah, it's such a beautiful country. It's not surprising, and people can work remotely, and no matter what they do. So it's perfect weather all year round, pretty much.
So growing up, did you always want to study law?
No, I hated it. Yeah, it's funny, because education, I came from a family that was really poor, and both of my parents have got amazing stories and, struggle, and they just really believed that education was the key. And, I think I was the first person in my family to finish the equivalent of Year 12, and the first person to go to university and to graduate from university. So it was a privilege and it was a responsibility. It wasn't an option.
Yeah.
And back in the day, the decision was sort of made for me that, we want you to get an education, and, you got to give back, that sort of thing. And that's what it's all about. And that's what I've been doing, for most of my career. But I studied, I did like some aspects of law, but I found it really, really confronting and really depressing, and really quite systemically racist.
Yeah.
The institution, the universities. But, at the time, you don't sort of call it. You just sort of think, well, this is how it is. And back, I was a young woman then. I think I was one of the youngest graduates, youngest First Nations graduates to come through. I would have been in my early 20s. And, it was as a young woman, as a young Aboriginal woman, it's there was lots of things that I didn't like about, I suppose I didn't feel safe around, and and in the end I basically left there and went to work in government, which was again challenging, but really informative in terms of my career, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But and interesting. But there were some great times too, really great times, and I got to do and see some things that a lot of people don't get to do and see, particularly at a young age.
Yeah.
But it was I'd always had music. I grew up with music, and that was my thing. But I wasn't really allowed to pursue it. It was like, well, you got to get an education. Music's not going to get you anywhere. That was the way my father, really.
Yeah.
What he really thought, get a real job, and they still say that. Because it's hard, it's really hard to make a living as a muso, and I think for those people, for those of us that that sort of do love and have that passion to follow music, you have to have that passion, otherwise it's just not sustainable to try and do to do this stuff as a full-time gig. Really hard, particularly harder today, I think, with the way that the world is and the way that the music industry is in this country and globally.
So now you're doing music full-time?
I run my own business, my own firm, a consultancy firm.
Yeah.
A bit like you, but I mean, I work in all sorts of areas, and I'm a coach. I went back and studied coaching and did a lot of other studies. Did a postgrad in theology, so spirituality, but ministry. But I've also done a lot of work in coaching and hypnosis, NLP, that type of thing.
Oh.
And now I do. I just run my own consultancy business, but it's sort of three areas really: consultancy, which is everything from sort of executive leadership, planning, strategic governance, that type of work, through policy, through to facilitating workshops and mentoring and working with coaching people, individuals and teams, community, corporate, and sort of government. And then there's the music. I do a lot of work in the music space, not just performing and writing and singing myself, but mentoring, workshops, schools, all of that sort of stuff. Yeah, so it's a bit of a mixed bag, but it's all in the First Nation space. So it's really, it's really, for me, it's really fulfilling.
Yeah. What attracts you so much to music?
Well, you just can't not. Like I was just born that way. I think we all have a love for music, but some people I was the sort of kid that just couldn't put the guitar down, couldn't get away from the piano, and I don't even know where it comes from. You're just the way you are, and that's how I was as a kid. And my father bought me a guitar when I was about 8 years old, and we couldn't afford a piano. But my auntie and uncle, they had a piano, an old piano at their house, and I used to just sit there from all day. And then same with the guitar, I just learned to taught myself. I think the nuns at school, I went to Catholic school, the nuns taught me a few chords, and I was away writing my own songs, as a young kid, and I just couldn't stop.
Yeah,
I just loved. That was what we did. We didn't have mobile phones, and TV. Well, I think we even had TV. Yeah, we did have TV, but I didn't really watch TV. I was never really into TV, and unless it was about music, the Countdown and those sorts of shows.
Yeah.
Johnny Young's Talent Time, showing my age now. But but just really love music. We were one of the, I suppose, few Murray families back in the day to have one of those old Grams, in the house, in the yard. And we had all the 70, those, what do they call, the vinyl, records and little 45s and cassettes, and when they came in. So I had access to all that music. My parents were they were pretty young and cool, and they listened to everything and anything, from Charlie Pride right through to Dylan, through to Shirley Bassey's, with Neil Diamond, all the Australian artists. So I had a really rich and very, very, very blessed upbringing as far as music goes. It was all accessible, and I just literally soaked it all up, loved it.
Did you have any favourites?
Yeah, look, I just love all sorts of music. Like, my mother sang in a band herself, and she sang in different songs, and she used to do back in the day. She was in a band doing sort of Polynesian dance, because she had this long black hair, and she learned they had a lot of those old Islander songs, but that they'd sing in language. But she was more they were more. She was doing all sorts of things with the band, and a couple of island boys on drums and guitar playing, that, I suppose, sort of, I guess, more sort of band type, sounds that people liked back in the day. But yeah, I really just loved all the, anything that came out of Australia, all the, latest top 40 sort of stuff that we were hearing in the 70s and 80s, because I grew up we would have been about mid-70s, and we used to get the little they used to print out the little top 40s on little slips of paper back in the day. And we'd know all of those songs, and we'd get access to them and learn them. So I loved it all. And as I got older, I start to really listen to lyrics and discern, and I'd had my favorite sort of artists that I loved, particularly women, because I could sing with the women rather than the sort of sing with some of the songs that were sung by male artists. But like, because Mum loves Shirley Bassey, what a legend, someone
Shirley Bassey's amazing.
I mean, like a black woman back in the day, just absolute pioneer. But I love people like Joan Armatrading. She was a really big inspiration for me. I met her, and at a concert, and she's really, really shy, but just seeing people like that, as women up front, performing, playing guitar. Lots of different. And then, of course, much later, people like Tracy Chapman, that sort of style. But I liked just about everybody and everything, and there wasn't too much I didn't like. There's so much more that I don't like today than I did back then. Maybe that comes with age, but it's also, it was just a very different era growing up, with actual, of course, no streaming and no videos, but just really, raw talent. Well, that's how I describe it. Younger people will disagree with me. My kids will disagree with me, but very, just. And we went to lots of concerts. I went to whatever concert was on back in the day. Somehow we got to go to that sort of stuff. So that was really, really special.
What was your first concert? Do you remember?
Yeah, I do. It was at the Cairns Civic Centre. You're going to laugh. Yeah. It was at the Cairns Civic Centre in about 1970. Maybe it was 75. Could have been even earlier. And it maybe 73 and it was Jamie Redfern.
Oh my God. Yeah. You mentioned Young Valentine before.
Yeah. And he was King of Pop.
Yeah. Oh my God.
And my other favorite artist was Debbie Byrne.
Wow.
She was the Queen of Pop. But again, I was thinking about this the other day because I was writing about this. And, it was interesting because they were young Australian artists, and that was really what was promoted more back then. There wasn't a lot of promotion of American music. Yes, there was. I mean, it was out there, but in my world, it was very much Sherbet, Skyhooks, JPY, Young Talentine, Tina Arena, Olivia Newton-John, John Farnham. That was what was promoted probably more in mainstream Australian TV. There's certainly no, Aboriginal bands obviously there would have been people like Jimmy Little or Lionel Rose, but I didn't really have access to that sort of to to that sort of music till much later. You know, any music I had was really around the traditional sort of stuff that I'd heard people singing. And I couldn't speak language, still can't speak any language or sing in language. Anything I've learned has been much later, you know, in life.
Yeah. So you write your own songs, but how old were you when you first wrote your first song?
I was 10, about 10.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, as we do, you know, you get that guitar and just want to do it out, just wanted to write it my way. So, you know, I just couldn't, because there'd always been music inside my head, you know?
Yeah.
Which is really common for writers, and the guitar was just the vehicle to be able to just sit in the bedroom and write and get songs out. So my sister, and I've got a sister called Terry, she's a year younger than me, and we're very close, and, you know, we'd sit and sing harmonies in the bedroom, you know, with the hairbrush and the tennis racket and the guitar and the old tape recorder.
Yep.
Where you just press play and record, and we'd just tape ourselves singing, and we'd write. We had our own little recording studio, you know, in the bedroom, and just write songs, you know, for friends. So wrote, you know, I'd have, God knows how many songs I've got, but, you know, I've got a song for this girlfriend, a song for the next girlfriend, and it was just family and all that sort of thing. You know, just couldn't stop doing it, and it's been like that the whole time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What makes a person good at writing songs?
Look, I you know, we were talking about this. I was talking about this the other night with someone, and, you know, because obviously there's just so many different things that people like in terms of songwriting and music. But for me, I think it's the hook, you know, it's that draws people, that grabs people, you know, whether it's the melody or the lyric or the voice, that particular style, something that's really catchy that sticks with you.
Yeah. And
I think that's what's really, I guess, how I you know, what's attracted me to the sort of artists that I've liked. You know, they're different styles, and they're really different, you know, really cool, funky, whatever it is, you know, their style that just grabs you straight away. You know, like, think of people like the Bee Gees, you know, like, they just wouldn't even matter if you couldn't hear their lyrics. The hook is there in the music, you know. And just that really catchy, really uplifting sort of, you know, deadly sound that everyone's like, oh wow, you know. And it's the same, I guess, you know, with bands today. There's something in there that grabs someone, and you know, that usually is their style or what makes them unique. But yeah, the hook and I guess it's something that's really catchy that, you know, you can't get out of your head. You're thinking. And someone said that to me the other day, said, oh, your song's so catchy, you know, and I said, and that was a real compliment.
Yeah.
It's not so much, oh, this is what this is about and this is what it means for me. Sometimes it is, but it's like, oh, you know, it's a good song because it's people remember it.
Yeah. Do you have a favourite song of yours?
Of mine, yeah, I do. My favourite one of mine is called Just to Be With You. And it's, you know, it's a couple that are my favourites that I think people probably like the least, or have heard the least. But it's just probably because may have been because at the time that I've written them I was in a good place or in a happy place. But I think it's just that particular song I just like because it's simple and it's, you know, emotional and it's raw.
Yeah.
And it's slow, so some people might think it's a bit too, you know, too slow or too ballady. But yeah, that's probably my favourite of mine.
Mm-hmm. Are you planning on doing more writing?
Yeah, I write nearly every day. I do lots. I'm a prolific writer. It's one thing I just can't stop doing. I've written so many songs I will never be able to record them all in my lifetime. I've just resolved that now. You know, even if I won, you know, lotto and could write profusely and record profusely, I still couldn't record them all. But you know, they're all there. You know, I keep a whole catalogue, and I'm constantly recording it in the studio. I've just spent the last 12 months in the studio, and then about to go in again, hopefully in August. So it's, you know, it's something that never stops, and there's some stuff that's hasn't been released that I'm, waiting to release. So, it's just, and I've been able to record with family, which has been really good. One of the last recordings we've just done that hopefully will be released in the next couple of months is a song called Belonging, and it's I'm singing with my niece and my daughters and my sister, and it was just so much fun to sing it and record in the studio with them. It was just like, this is what it's all about,
So I write poetry a lot.
Yeah.
But I'm just thinking, if I was going to write a song, do you hear the music in your head at the same time as you're writing it?
Yeah, look, it varies, but for me, I usually hear the music first.
Yeah.
And then the lyric sort of fits into the melody. But but look, a lot of my friends are poets, and I've often said to them, let's write together. But music is, music, and particularly today, it doesn't have to rhyme, it doesn't have to make sense.
Yeah.
People aren't really judging you on the lyric, the quality. Well, not everybody judges, because you can't often understand the lyric until you really sit down and listen back. But if you've got that hook, you get them straight away. So but poetry, I mean, is obviously a real skill and a real gift. It's all spoken word, and the stuff that I've heard, people are doing just blows me away. But I think the difference with music is you don't have to be so descriptive and so verbose. You can just, it's more about repetition and catchiness than storytelling. I mean, storytelling is important, but I think for me, I prefer. That's why one of the reasons why I love songwriting, because it's quick and it's short and it's done. Don't want to write a book or a whole poem. Just want to do this song and get it over and done with and record it.
Yeah. You're talking about storytelling. One of the questions I was going to ask you is, what does truth-telling mean to you?
Yeah, well, it's interesting, isn't it, in this time that we live in? I think it's, it really is about just setting the record straight, isn't it? Truth-telling means different things to different people, but I think when we're talking about it in the context, in the current political and, time in Australian history that we live, it really is about telling the true history of this country to everybody, from First Nations eyes, those stories being told, and correcting or, changing the whole, I guess, the whole way, the whole worldview, the way that, we see things in this country. So not just historical data, but really getting people to start thinking with that First Nations lens, about what's important and why it's important, and how people can learn from, thousands and thousands of years of wisdom, of knowledge, of music, of art, of culture, and how that can contribute to, basically, improve this country for everyone, But it's also really coming to understand and at least empathise and develop a sense of empathy around and compassion around all of the historic injustice and the, just the genocide, the political, well, what do you call it? The atrocities and the all the damage and the harm that's been caused to people systemically and, individually.
Because you do a lot of workshops, I'm going to ask you a question here. Do you find that in your workshops, people are quite surprised at how recent this stuff really is?
Yeah, you probably get this question a lot too. Absolutely. I was doing a thing the other week, and sometimes we sort of break up the serious stuff with a bit of trivia.
Yeah.
Just, sort of say, oh, he's the guy on the $50 note, can you tell us who did this and who did that? And people just don't know. They have no or very little knowledge of, First Nations history, which is really sad because it's not taught, and, people don't either don't know because they haven't been taught, or they don't want to know. And, I like to think it's because they haven't been taught, but there is also, I think, an underlying current, and I think it's, possibly even growing, in the current climate that we live in, where people just don't want to know or aren't interested. And that really disturbs me. Yeah.
At school growing up, did you have any Aboriginal issues taught at school?
No, absolutely not. Not absolutely not. I think by the time I got to university, they introduced some curriculum, some studies, but we did go on camps. The Aboriginal education, the AECG was called back in the day.
Yeah.
It was run by, actually, I got a job there when I finished school, and I was studying, and I worked with Linda Burney. Yeah, and they used to run camps, for all the kids on AB study. And so we'd all meet up in that region. I think they still do it. I'm not sure. But, so we'd all go away in cultural camps. In Canberra, we were really lucky because there was, from 1975 onwards, or around about that time, mid-70s, early 80s, there was such a big movement where Charlie Perkins had, become the head of the Department of Aboriginal Affairs. And there was a lot of, political changes happening in Canberra, a lot of families and people coming to Canberra, not just to live, but to lobby government and to, form that organisations and really, in every area, health, education, housing, the land issues. So it was a really powerful time, but everyone would stay at our house, and sleep over, and it'd be, Toni, get the guitar, come out and play, So the lounge room would be full of all these, quite famous people and Aboriginal people. And I grew up with that stuff, And then we'd have on weekends, one of the uncles would come around and play the didgeridoo. We'd have cultural, days on the weekends where all the families would come together and learn stories and different things. And that was really, I can remember, I think I can say his name, Uncle Bobby Randall, would come around and, teach us, different things. And there were some really wonderful people growing up that, cultural leaders, elders that, had access to that, we did all those sorts of things as families. And that was really, really powerful. But, I didn't really have any learnings in school. It was always you're the only black kid in the class. And, we were always in the remedial classes because, that's where they thought we belonged. And a lot of racism at school. Canberra wasn't so bad. Cairns was pretty bad, but Canberra was, oh, wow, there's different nationalities and where do you come from? And kids were, really interested in wanting to, know about, Aboriginal culture. What does that mean? So that was really interesting. But certainly by the time I got to university, there was studies at uni even, Aborigines and the law.
Wow, what is it? What a subject
title.
Well,
I actually did it. I think I can't remember. It was one of the electives I did, but it was basically learning about different areas of the law and how that applied to Aboriginal people and things like property law and human rights law. Yeah. So, but taught by a non-Aboriginal lecturer, a brilliant man actually who taught that. He's no longer alive, but professor who did a lot of work in this space. But really, it was really challenging because this was pre-Mabo. So I was learning like property law, where it was like, well, the doctrine of terra nullius is still well and truly valid.
Yeah.
And that Aboriginal people didn't own land and they weren't here, or they didn't have recognised systems. So it was really, really hard to hear that sort of stuff.
Another word that gets thrown around a lot is cultural safety.
Yeah.
What does cultural safety mean to you, and what makes you feel culturally safe when you go to a service, for example?
Yeah, well, I talk about this a lot with clients and do a lot of work in this space with other people. I think it's just having, feeling comfortable, feeling valued, feeling respected, feeling safe in terms of being able to speak what you need to say, to say what you need to say honestly, and to be heard, to be valued, to be respected. and not, I guess, not offended or rejected or humiliated in any way, But again, that it has different things. It means different things for different people. Some people will say it's just, they don't feel safe. They don't feel safe in places where, in a system where people are dominant, which obviously, is a fair point. But I think for me, it's more about, just being respected and being able to be heard and valued for who you are, in an environment too that is welcoming and, inclusive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I ask you another question now? It's if a young Aboriginal person wants to get into the music industry, where would you suggest they start?
Well, my question would be why? Why do you want to get into the industry? What do you want to do? Do you want to write a #1 hit song and make a lot of money and be another Justin Bieber or Taylor Swift? What do you want to do? Do you want to write songs that restore language? Do you want to learn about your culture or your heritage? Do you want to perform for kids or family or mob? Do you just want to write and record? You want to collaborate with other artists? It comes back to what people want to do. There's not one pathway. With music, obviously, there's so much you can do. I mean, some people might want to write for film, or different film and TV, that type of thing. But or get a classical training so they can perform with and understand, read music and actually score and write music and study with symphonies and get into theatre or that type of thing. Whatever they want to do, the sky's the limit. Or it might just be that people just love that they want to write their own stories and they want to create their own songs and be able to express themselves, and just as much does a visual artist, they just want to get whatever that creative juice is inside of them out, as they say, in material form, onto a canvas, onto a piece of paper, onto a onto a recording in a studio. It really depends what people want to do. Yeah, so and if you think about that, then that sort of determines. You think about what pathway you want, then you think about where you should start. Like if you want to be a writer, study the people who you love, whose songs you love, and how they write. If you want to be a performer, study performance. Diction, how to actually hold yourself and to stand in front of a big crowd, how to deal with nerves, all that sort of stuff. Because there's a big difference. A lot of people are great songwriters and great musicians, but they're really not. Performing is not their strong point. Yeah. And that's okay because nobody's got it all. Unless you're someone like Taylor Swift, who I suppose people think she has it all because it's in that sort of white success commercial model. She does, from that point of view. But for us, it's never been about that. It's always been about culture, and it's always been about, like, I sing for my kids, and to leave a legacy, and I grew up singing with my sister. That's when I'm the happiest, and when we just sit around at home, like we did in Canberra or Cairns, we sit around the fire or the lounge room floor, or, even still today when we get together as family or even in the studio, and we're just laughing and having fun and making it up. And Mum used to she'd get the the broomstick out, we're singing the microphone and do the hula or something, and just actually it's more of a way of connecting and celebrating culturally who we are, and all having a go and being part of, rather than oh, you're the star, or you're the star, or you're going to do this, or but obviously along the way you've got to think about how you're going to pay your bills and how you're going to sell records or get promoted. So you've got to learn all the business side of music as well if you want to go down that path. And that in itself is really daunting. But there's so many courses and skills around, and people, and grant funding opportunities and workshops, that it's not actually that difficult today. People have so much information online and at their fingertips that you can record a number one hit in the bush.
Yeah.
As we know, it doesn't matter where you are in the world or where you've grown up, or even what language you're singing in. It's really, really universal music. That's what I love about it.
Yeah. Where do you see yourself in 5 years' time?
Well, I'll probably still be doing what I'm doing. I don't see any big changes. Maybe just recording more music. I'd love to do a little bit more collaboration with people, which is, something that I enjoy. Maybe I wouldn't mind doing a bit more travel, with music. I do a lot of sort of local performing and occasionally get around to some of the festivals. But as I'm getting older and as the industry is really becoming a lot more competitive, particularly, in this current economic sort of climate, a lot of the venues and the pubs and the clubs and the festivals are really struggling. So it's highly competitive. But, there's work. If you want work, if you want to sing, if you want to perform, there is work there. You can go and get it. It just depends on what how badly you want it and what you want to do. I actually do a lot of open mics because I love the practice. That's become a big thing for us because there's a whole community of musos that come together and we all support each other. And, I just love the talent that you see at these places. There's so much talent, someone you sort of think, oh, they're only a young person or they're an older person who's never performed in their life, and they get up and they just wow, So it's some of the greatest things I've seen have come from that sort of not amateur set, but just impromptu, community style, very local space, which I think is a good thing because it's really there seems to be a real push back to that space in the music at the moment.
Do you think music's changing and people's tastes are changing?
This is probably get slammed for saying this, but I think music is, this is just obviously my personal opinion, but I think music's become so diverse and so the market is so saturated. You can't possibly listen to everything. There's so many bands and so many artists, you can't even name them, that, someone will say, have you heard of so-and-so? Like, yeah, right, I haven't heard of them. It's changing because there's so many opportunities and ways for people to get out there, which is fantastic, but doesn't always necessarily mean quality. I still think some of the best music was back in the 70s and 80s, and that's a lot of the music. And I know, I guess I say it depends on who you are, but a lot of people will say no, the music today is amazing, but I guess it's just the style that I love because I've grown up with it. I really think there's a lot to be said for some of the older style music because it's much more universal and much more it's just sort of got that more soul and more energy in it that's real. Whereas a lot of stuff that I hear today, it could be anybody could be singing it. It could be about anything, and dime a dozen sort of that sort of music style. But that's just my personal viewpoint. Yeah. Listen to some particular young women, but it goes for men as well, but singing in that same sort of accent, the same sort of song about the same sort of theme. There's nothing really original there for me. But that's not to put them down. It's just, how it's a personal taste, isn't it, really, what I like and what I don't like. Doesn't mean to say they're not good songwriters or they don't have an appeal to a younger audience. In fact, they do.
Yeah. So I'm just watching the time. I've got two questions for you.
Yeah, sure.
One is the term reconciliation. We hear it
Yep.
all the time. What does it mean to you?
More than a word.
Have we achieved it yet?
Absolutely no, we haven't. I just was involved with the latest reconciliation campaign. Did an ad. You had to wear the T-shirt. More than a word, or
yep.
something like that. Anyway, and our line was we need change now. And it's really interesting because post referendum, you have to really, again, everything we've spoken about tonight is about context. And I think that reconciliation is something that, you really have to, whilst in theory it's a fantastic concept and we all want reconciliation, we all want, things to be better for generations to come. But the reality is that, the referendum, I do believe, has set the whole agenda back 30, 40, maybe even 50 years in this country. And, for whatever reasons, and you can talk about this till the cows come home, as you probably know, AJ, but, we've just got so much work to do. I think that's the bottom line. If we learn anything out of the referendum is that, oh my God, we've got there's so much work that has to be done in this country. And I don't just mean, blackfellas. I just don't mean, First Nations people having to do the work. I mean systems, governments, schools, people, community groups, everybody. We just have not done the work, and it's really sad because you would have probably hoped that, certainly in my lifetime, that, we were ready to make some, fundamental changes in this country, but clearly no. I sang at one of the Yes campaign marches here in Meanjin in Brisbane, and I think there was like in excess of 20,000, maybe 30,000 people turned out, and it was fantastic to see. It wasn't even covered on TV. No. And there was just a real backlash, media backlash against the whole campaign. And I think, just a real distortion around what the issues were. And unfortunately, caused a lot of division. And, many people have said to me, and the reports have been after, post-referendum, if we really understood what we were doing, of course we would have voted yes, but it was, and I know it's controversial, and I know people, Australians, non-First Nations people and First Nations people themselves, we all have different views. And of course that's okay too. But I think when you look at it in the collective, and, from a national and even international, contextual lens, from that lens, it should have been a no-brainer.
Yeah.
And it really has put, I think, practically a lot of issues really on the back burner now, which is very sad. Good for business, like obviously because there's a lot of work, and we'll continue to educate and continue to go out there and do things. But for generations, I think it's going to be a while before, again, we're asking those questions. And maybe I was quite positive, prior post-referendum, and I think a lot of First Nations people were. But you have to ask, when and how are we going to get that same momentum again? Probably, I don't think we'll see it in another 50 years.
Yeah.
Even with treaties, all the states are doing their own thing, which is great. But nationally, it's going to take a while. I think it's really just opened up a discussion and the need for even more healing. Yeah. That's my view again, personal view.
That's your view, yes. Look, I'm just watching the time, and I do want to say thank you for joining us, but I've got one final question is, what would you like people to walk away with from our yarn this afternoon?
Oh, look, I think that's a good question. I guess I just hope that people, can see the connection between music, between politics, between real life, between the plight of First Nations people and our issues and our families, that things are real, you know, and that they are nuanced and they are complex, and that, you know, we are who we are, and that, you know, I would really love to see, you know, other Australians, other non-First Nations people really, you know, start to open their hearts and their minds and their brains, you know, and learn so much more about the beautiful, diverse and rich culture and cultures that we have in this country.
That's beautiful. I want to say thank you very much for joining us. You know how much I love you.
I didn't know that. Thank you.
You. And thanks for the autograph as well.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah.
I have seen you perform live, I think about 3 times.
Have you? Oh, where was that?
In Brisbane.
Okay.
And once in Sydney. I've never seen you perform in Melbourne.
No, we were in Melbourne at Christmas, and I just got to do a few little sort of local things, but nothing major. But I definitely want to come back there at the end of the year and do something.
Oh, definitely. I'll be in the front row.
Yeah, we've got to organise it and make it happen.
Yes, yes. So, guys, I want to thank you very much for Toni joining us today. And thank you very much for joining us today, Toni.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's such a privilege and an honour, really.
But thanks, guys.
The great work you do. Well done.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.